Joining me now, Jon Meacham, the Rogers Chair in the American Presidency at Vanderbilt. He occasionally advises President Biden on historical matters and major speeches. He is the author of The Call to Serve, a visual biography of George H.W. Bush, which comes out this Tuesday. Jon, thank you very much for coming back to the Sunday Show. Talk about why it is an affront to the fallen that a former president and potential future president is praising authoritarians and parroting Nazi slogans as part of his campaign.
Well, you know, there's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. And that may sound overly dorky, but it's incredibly relevant to where we are now, as you just laid out. Patriotism is allegiance to an idea, to a set of principles. In the United States, our best patriotic instincts is finds its expression in an allegiance to the Declaration of Independence as our mission statement. The Constitution, as it's been said, is our user's guide. Nationalism, however, is about allegiance and protection and privileging of your own kind, of people who look like you, people who were born where you were born, co-religionists, that there's a sameness to it. And it doesn't necessarily involve principle. The marvelous thing about American democracy is that, in fact, we have managed to, despite all of our imperfections, put the principle that all men are created equal, the most important sentence ever originally rendered in English by Thomas Jefferson. We have put that sentence at the heart of the national experiment. And the men and the women whom we commemorate today, tomorrow, and whenever we ponder this remarkable democratic lowercase d system that's enabled us to live lives of consequence and liberty, whenever we think about them, we are imagining people, we are commemorating people who were willing to die for that principle, not for just people who looked like them, but for a principle that we were all created equal. And to introduce and promulgate and defend and repeat, all of which President Trump and his followers have done, a vernacular of dictatorship and authoritarianism and autocracy is to undermine the very system that they wish to represent. And to my mind, it is a choice we're making to that 49 to 50% of the country, for sundry reasons, are choosing to enable this authoritarian movement. And it's incumbent, therefore, on everybody else to stand up against it.
Right. And to that point, Jon, you know what worries me? That a sizable chunk of the American electorate appears ready to give up on democracy, including elected officials like Senator Vance, who's out there praising authoritarians. So talk me off the ledge if you think I'm worrying too much.
No, I don't jump, but stay on the ledge, because by being on the ledge, you will continue to tell the story of what American democracy should be. And if you tell that story, that's the only way we have, is to tell the story and to show how democracy, in fact, delivers for people. You're not at all wrong to be terrified about this. This is also a country, let's be clear, that for far more of its years of existence, what lived outside of compliance with the Declaration of Independence than we have lived inside compliance, right? You and I have talked about this before. This country wasn't founded in 1619 or 1776. This country was founded in 1965.
Yep. When
there was the ballot box was actually integrated, and President Johnson signed the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 that removed those racist 1920s quotas that tended to only allow favored Northern Europeans. So we're a very young country. We're a very young democracy. And so you have to stay on the ledge and keep pointing out the things you pointed out.
Yeah, American democracy is only 2 years older than I am. I am 50. I was born in
Right.
67. You know, I'm going to get you on one more thing, because Trump has cranked up his propensity for projection lately and has tried to turn President Biden's attacks on Trump against him. Listen to what he said at the Trump said at the Libertarian Conference last night.
Joe Biden's radical left Democrat Party is a fascist movement that wants to throw you in jail. The fact is that Joe Biden is a threat to democracy.
You know, John, Trump is engaged in all this projection, as the New York Times reports that he has cast doubt on the election results earlier and more often with each campaign. What's Trump up to with this?
Exactly that. And it's working, by the way. The polling shows that an extraordinary number of Republicans, an extraordinary number of folks think that Democrats are a greater threat to democracy than Republicans are. This is why the truth matters. This is why the repetition of the truth, however it may seem homiletic, it may seem repetitive, it may seem boring, it may seem preachy, but there's a reason we need to keep preaching this. And it's because President Trump is very, very good at flipping these things around. It's part of an authoritarian playbook. It's about mendacity. It's about a big lie. We've dealt with this in American history before. We've dealt with this in European history before. But it's only dealt with if those who believe the truth, which is the opposite of what Trump is saying there, continue to stand up and insist that, as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. And it is simply the fact that President Biden is defending American democracy with all of its imperfections, and Donald Trump has self-evidently, with the evidence of our own eyes, again and again attempted to undermine it. And so if you are going to stand with Trump because you think President Biden is X, Y, or Z, be very cognizant of what you're doing. You are not just casting a vote for marginal tax rates. You are not just casting a vote for a particular policy. If you do this, you are casting a vote to undermine fundamental American institutions. And it's, as President Biden would say, that's not hyperbole.
That's not hyperbole, and it wouldn't just undermine American institutions. It would destroy American institutions. I'm just going to keep it plain. Jon Meacham, thank you, as always, for coming to the Sunday Show.
Thanks, Jonathan.